Hello Food Day friends, today I'll be reviewing the Sonia G Designer Pro brush. I'll provide an overview of the brush, compare it to other brushes, and at the end give you my final thoughts. Let's get started. Here we have the Sonia G Designer Pro brush. It will be joining the Pro series with the red handles that come to a taper. This brush retails for $46 and it is sold exclusively via Beautylish. The bristles of this brush are dyed Chikuhodo goat bristles, and as far as dyed goat goes, this one, as well as all of Sonia's other brushes, are the softest dyed goat I have ever felt. The size is small for a cheek brush, and the shape from the side is described as an almond shape. It comes to a gentle taper. It is of medium density and feels very airy and soft. I'll also point out that the ferrule is rounded at the tip, helps give the brush extra volume and airiness and overall fluffiness, which is its main differentiating feature, the fact that even though it's a smaller in size and it's going to provide a very precise targeted application of powder products, it's at the same time very airy and soft, which will allow for a gradual and well-blended application. I think the best uses for this brush are going to be blush topper, highlighting, and targeted sculpting, as well as targeted powder application, for example, underneath the eye area. As a side note, the Beautylish product description does mention that you could use this as a bronzer brush, and while you could, I personally will not be reaching for it as a bronzer brush because it is rather small. I'll put it next to some of my favorite bronzing brushes. This is the Tom 405. Here we have the Sonia G Sculpt 1, as well as the Sonia G Inochigi Pro. These are my favorite bronzer brushes, so if you have similar preferences for a larger bronzer brush, perhaps the Designer Pro may not be as well suited for that purpose. I'll provide a few other more size comparisons with other Food Day brushes. These brushes are by no means similar or the same. I mostly want to put them in the video to provide more size comparisons. So this is the Hakuhodo B110, which is described as one of their bestseller cheek brushes. I have the Chikuhodo Z4, and both of these have hairs that are slightly longer and wider. And then here is the Sonia G Mini Cheek. Again, hopefully that is helpful just for size comparison purposes. And while I have the Z4 out, I would like to note that this is an all squirrel brush, and so it is extremely soft and airy. But in my opinion, the Designer Pro is very, very comparable in softness, which is incredible considering these are different hair materials. This is a goat brush, this is a squirrel brush, but I would argue that the Designer Pro is nearly as soft as the Chikuhodo squirrel brush. Now let's actually move on to other Sonia G cheek brushes, which are going to be closer comparisons in terms of size and function. Here we have the Cheek Pro, which is smaller in bristle length, it's more round, and it's more densely packed. So when you combine all of these factors, this brush is going to have less give and flexibility compared to the new Designer Pro. And then the one that I think it's closest to from our existing collection is the Classic Cheek, which was part of the Sky set. And this one is also more dense and slightly more rounded compared to the Designer one. And so this one too will be a little bit more precise with product placement. But all of these three brushes, I would say, are very similar in terms of softness. I think the softness between them is identical, but with the Designer Pro, because it is more airy and less densely packed, it does feel softer when using it on the skin. and I'll put these together since I forgot to. So the bristles are a little longer, but the ferrules are very similar in size. So on my right hand we have the Cheek Pro, and on my left hand is the Designer Pro. Lastly, I would like to compare it to two other brushes from different brands, because these two brushes were what I thought the closest in size comparison. Here we have the Wing Goss airbrush. This one retails for $35 and it is made 100% of blue squirrel hair. This is a very multi-purpose brush for powder products. I personally use it for blush and subtle highlight application. And the shapes are similar. The Wing Goss comes to more of a pointed, tapered top, and it is also smaller at the ferrule, and the pinched ferrule is more noticeable. It's also less dense, and that's due to the fact that the ferrule width is smaller, but also the squirrel hair bristles are more fine compared to the goat one. In terms of softness, again, the Wing Goss is squirrel hair, so it's a tiny bit softer, but when you're using it, the Designer Pro one feels almost identical in terms of softness, which I think is amazing. And then the last brush I'll compare it to is the Hakuhodo S113. This one retails for $74 in the red handle and $55 in the black handle S series. Mine is an older version, so if you were to purchase this now, the bristles would be white undyed goat hair, whereas mine is dyed goat hair. Because of this, I'm not going to comment on the softness comparison between these brushes because I don't have the latest version of this brush. And this one, the shape is very similar too. So looking at them straight on, they are both about the same rounded shape at the top. The Hakuhodo one is described as round, which means the top is round, and flat, which means that the side comes more to a flat paddle shape. So this one, like the Wing Goss one, is skinnier and less dense and airy compared to the Designer Pro, but very similar in size and shape. And I use this one primarily for blush application in a linear paddle motion. And then I use the tip for more subtle highlighting application, which I think you could do the same with the Designer Pro one. The difference with the Designer Pro is that because it is more dense on the sides, I think you can use it both in a linear application, but it's easy to also move the brush in the circular way to do more buffing and blending of those powder products. So to conclude, the Sonia G Designer Pro brush compared to a lot of the other brushes I've talked about is the most airy and soft. Overall, it's going to be a very welcomed addition to my personal collection, and I think it's a welcomed addition to the Pro Series because the Pro Series face set did not have a more soft and airy application brush. The other brushes in the set are more precise and targeted in their application. I will note, however, that this brush is similar to other brushes in terms of shape and function. For instance, the airbrush and the Hakuhodo ones I pointed out. So if you already have those brushes or others similar to them, you might be better off considering some of Sonia's other brushes, which I'll put some here too, because she has a lot of variety in her collection, and you might find one that is better suited to your needs and makeup application techniques. And this is something I also touched on my prior video of the Sky Blue set review. In closing, I think the brush is very lovely and a welcomed addition, but do be mindful about maybe not buying duplicates of brushes that will perform a very similar function in your everyday use. Having said all of that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it.